Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back to another one of our chapter 25 videos. We are taking a look at an old friend. So we're looking at our cut of our Bowman's capsule model from the lab, and we're seeing here the larger afferent arteriole moving into Bowman's capsule, becoming or feeding into glomerulus, which is our fenestrated capillary bed, of course, exiting with a smaller efferent arteriole. We're seeing here Bowman's capsule having two layers of tissue, the parietal layer and the visceral layer, which we can talk about as podocytes, wrapping around the glomerulus and forming the filtration slit. And we see the capsular space, which is going to hold the filtrate. What I'd like you to do is pay attention to, as the fluid exits the fenestrated capillary and it moves into the capsular space, we see it next moving into the proximal convoluted tubule, which we will be abbreviating as PCT. And notice that lining the proximal convoluted tubule, you have simple cuboidal epithelial cells or tissue, and that this simple cuboidal cell has microvilli. So these extensions of the cell membrane increase surface area. This is another brush border. So we called it a brush border when we saw it in the jejunum, and we call it a brush border again here. Same concept. In both cases, the microvilli increased surface area, which allowed for better absorption. And that's what we're going to see happening as the main job in the proximal convoluted tubule. So again, when we talk about the proximal convoluted tubule, we can abbreviate this as the PCT. And we see that this is grabbing that fluid that has just been filtered out of the glomerulus. And so here's a close-up picture of our nephron. And the proximal convoluted tubule would be this portion that's more proximal to the Bowman's capsule. So let's make sure and label that. For those of you who can see Bowman's capsule. And then I've highlighted in this pink color what would be the proximal convoluted tubule, which we can abbreviate as PCT. So it is this piece of nephron that is connecting the glomerular capsule or Bowman's capsule to what we're going to call the loop of Henle, or you can call it the nephron loop. So it's this piece in between. Once the filtrate enters the proximal convoluted tubule, we're going to call it tubular fluid because it's inside this tube. And remember, we said that it's going to be lined with simple cuboidal epithelium. And we're going to see microvilli. So we're going to have another brush border here, just like we talked about in jejunum. Now, what we're going to be seeing is the main job of the proximal convoluted tubule is absorption. Or you can call it, if you want, reabsorption, because this material was first absorbed as a small intestine, made its way into the bloodstream, and then once it gets to the glomerulus, it gets pushed out because of the net filtration pressure, the high pressure of the glomerular hydrostatic pressure or blood hydrostatic pressure, right? And so now back at the proximal convoluted tubule, we're going to reabsorb nutrients, right? We're going to reabsorb nutrients. When we say nutrients, we're talking about glucose. We're talking about amino acids. So nothing as big as a protein is going to be filtered out. But peptides, amino acids could have, and so those would be reabsorbed. Any kind of vitamins that may have been pushed out will get reabsorbed, and a bunch of electrolytes. So we're going to be reabsorbing sodium ion and potassium ion, calcium ion, chloride ion. We have bicarbonate ion. We have water being absorbed here. Actually, let me put that at the end. So magnesium ion, and then let's do our big water, and let's circle that. So we'll see quite a lot of water being absorbed here, something like 67% of the water that was initially filtered out is going to be reabsorbed at the proximal convoluted tubule. When we talk about nutrients being reabsorbed, we should think like 99.9% of nutrients are going to be reabsorbed. So this is really a super important function of this particular space. When we talk about this water reabsorption, we're going to talk about it as obligatory water reabsorption, as in we're obligated to do it, meaning this isn't one of those things that varies based on the hormones that are secreted. This is an automatic, this water is going to be returned into the bloodstream situation. We'll also see that some sodium ion is going to be pumped into the interstitial space. So this is going to be the space surrounding the nephron. We're going to see that in the kidneys, medulla, we're going to have a really high osmolarity. And so that's going to be important as we make our way through. Okay, up next, we have the loop of Henle. So stay tuned. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.